Tell us your PC wish list and you can win a custom PC from NCIX and Hardware Canucks. Check the description to learn more.
So you guys know our history with cases, and one common aspect between all of them was the lack of initial user flexibility, in the sense that you just received an end product from a manufacturer. But if you ever wondered what it'd be like to choose your fan mounts, side panels, top panels, case feet, color configuration, front panel connectors, and bay covers to really customize your chassis to your own personal preference and hardware, well, there aren't that many companies that do that. So today we're taking a look at a fully customizable chassis from CaseLabs. This is their Mercury S5 with a pedestal. Now here we have a full ingredients list, if you will, for all the possible side panel options and such, but the base price for the S5 and the pedestal are $260 and $150 respectively. Now your experience with CaseLabs starts with a chassis of your choice, followed by a huge list of customizable options, so you just need to have a preconceived idea of what your final build will look like, as getting separate panels after your order is complete is a bit costly. The case will arrive disassembled, and putting things together is really simple and actually a lot of fun. You'll be working with 100% aluminum construction, which is really light but super sturdy as well, and very motor friendly. 2.3mm thick frame and 1.6mm for doors and exterior covers. You really have to work with the case to see how amazing everything feels, but you can also just trust me. All the panels are sitting on these toolless hinges, so removing them is really simple. You can also replace the hinges after some time, as they might get loose. For example, on our sample, we're not tight enough to hold the panel and the poles just kind of went through, but you can manually tighten them as I did here. Now when it comes to bay covers, CaseLabs has you covered. The S5 has 7 5.25-inch drive base, and depending on your build, different bay cover sizes are available both in solid and ventilated formats. A dual 120mm fan bracket is available. There is a very popular option for a 240mm radiator or a single 140mm. With a standard 240mm radiator installed with the tubing at the top, it will prevent clearance for the top bay. But using a low profile fan controller will work, and of course flipping the radiator with tubing at the bottom will clear up the top bay slot. The S5 has a 120mm cutout leading into the pedestal for tubing to pass through. It's exactly what we'll be doing for our water cooling setup. But first, let's check out the rest of the chassis. The front panel connectors are replaceable, and our unit is equipped with PR buttons and only 2 USB 3 ports. Coming to the top, if you are using the pedestal to house all your radiators, a windowed panel would be sweet to show off your hardware, but of course we do have ventilated options as well, with a top radiator bracket. A slightly taller ventilated panel is also available that allows fans to be installed above the bracket for just a little extra internal clearance if you decide to do push and pull. I also would like to point out that none of the panels are dust proof, which, as you know, I think should be a standard with all cases, and we followed up with CaseLabs about this, and it's something they're working on. And due to the variable nature of what people are doing with the chassis, they rather let users decide on the type of filters that they use. Now on topic of panels, we have a full window, half window, or ventilated panel. Again, that would depend on your budget and system preference. For example, having a full window on the left, showcasing your GPU and the drives, while only a half window on the right side to cover up all the cables from the power supply. Now let's take off the panels and see how the Mercury S5 handles the system. The optional pedestal is attached with 4 screws, so you can just easily remove it. The S5 supports 2 mechanical drives with 4 SSDs that are installed in their own chamber. The 3.5-inch drives are mounted using insert method with really high quality rubber grommets, and the drives are facing the cutout for proper SATA pass-through from the power supply chamber. Mounting SSDs, however, is a little more work. You do have to screw the drives in place, and that means taking off the SSD bracket, which also means taking out your toolbox to unscrew these nuts, so you will need a wrench. I really would have preferred thumb screws, or at least a screw that I can use with a regular screwdriver, but once in place, you can also see there's quite a bit of unused room closer to the front that I think could potentially house another SSD cage. The front panel cables we pass through a single rubber grommet and underneath the motherboard tray that is also removable for those wanting to work with the motherboard off the case. The CPU cutout, as you can see, is fairly large, and right underneath there's the ventilation for your power supply. So CaseLabs has pretty much thought of everything users would need when building a system into this micro ATX chassis. The pedestal underneath is really meant for housing radiators. Optional power supplies are used for additional storage. All of these options are of course available at your initial order, and of course anything to place in those bay covers. And here we have a 360mm radiator bracket along with a 240/280mm bracket on the other side. Both are easily removable, and given we have a little over 11 inches of width for the case, push and pull on each side with thick 60mm radiators is actually doable. The smaller radiator bracket allows for drive bays to be populated, and that's exactly what we'll be doing with this dual bay pump reservoir combo provided from dasmo.com, and using the cutout at the top to route all of our tubing. To attach anything in the drive bays, we first need to mount these bay brackets. Very simple to do, and everything just fits in place. Now the large brackets are okay for optical drives or dual bay reservoirs like you see here, but CaseLabs also includes a pair of low profile brackets to be used with low profile fan controllers. And with the reservoir installed at the bottom, we still have over 11 centimeters of clearance, so push and pull with thick radiator is a possibility. Now we are using dark side radius from Dasmo. We first mounted everything onto the bracket and then into the S5, which is totally hassle free. Also, if you are mounting radiators on both sides of the pedestal, you can remove the floor with a few screws to get access to tubing, which is something very clever and totally useful. We also get a fan mount in the basement, either for exhaust or for intake, depending on how you set up your radiator cooling. And finally, starting with the assembly, we get our bottom and top exhaust ready, install our front 240mm rad, which is super easy to do with just a few thumb screws, and we're also mounting a 360 rad at the top as well, since we have the taller top panel for the fans to be above the frame. We're using an EK Supreme water block provided from Dasmo that has an awesome Canadian mark on there with a maple leaf, and mounting that onto the motherboard, and we are good to go. Now we've got everything set up before running all the tubing, and I just have to say that this open design and the flexibility of the S5 is a total pleasure to work with when it comes to water cooling. Radiator brackets are really convenient to do all the fan mounting off the case and then just drop the brackets in place. Plus, if anything needs to be changed down the road, it's as simple as popping off the panel, removing 4 screws for that bracket. So here's me doing all the tubing, and while I may not do such a clean job, it's an absolute breeze to work in. Tubing is routed into the pedestal where 2 more radiators can be housed, and with the whole system assembled, the one area the S5 is lagging, I think, is cable management. There's just nowhere to secure the cables, and it is really left to users' creativity to come up with a clean system. For example, I would have loved to see something for the 8-pin cable, and maybe a few cable tie notches underneath the motherboard to secure the 24-pin cable. The power supply is held securely by the screws at the back, but there is some spacing at the bottom, so for 1200 watt units or higher, a support bracket is available, but the aluminum is thick enough to handle even very large power supplies. Now, I personally love the look of this incredibly simple design that turns out to be extremely functional and super flexible since the very beginning. Also, who knew that I would enjoy the case wheels this much, so I'd certainly recommend them for convenient transport. Now, there are a lot of things to like about the Mercury S5 and the CaseLabs company as a whole. For one, 100% aluminum construction is seriously amazing, guys. We have so much flexibility from the initial order that allows users to really build a system that would work for their configuration. Water cooling is a total breeze with separate radiator brackets, and while the S5 is an excellent case on its own, the pedestal adds a new level of water cooling configuration, storage options, or extra power supplies. So all in all, it is very appealing. Now, of course, with all that said, I do think that there are a few aspects of the design that could be changed for the better. Now, for one, you require a wrench to remove the SSD and hard drive cages that is out of line for this whole concept of user-friendly assembly. A few thumb screws instead would be a lot better. Cable management is also a bit lagging, and we have nowhere to secure the 24-pin cable. There are no dust filters included, and I would have liked to see some magnetic options available. And lastly, the price. We've gotten very accustomed to pricing between $100 to $200 cases, and the pedestal alone will set you back to $150. Plus, the initial configuration for the S5 is $260, and to give you a whole roundup, our total configuration with windowed side panels, radiator brackets, and the pedestal came to over $500. Now, I wouldn't consider the price a con necessarily. However, I could see many people wondering why pay so much for an aluminum box, and the answer is very simple. That's because you get to customize the case basically from the ground up, and of course that 2.3mm thick aluminum is expensive, so you buy into the amazing build quality. And we're giving it the Hardware Canucks Damn Good Award. Now, last thing before we end this video is we will be giving away this entire Mercury S5 with the pedestal, and a cherry on top is the full water cooling kit in the near future. So hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe to be notified about the official giveaway video. So a huge thanks to CaseLabs and Dasmo.com for making this review possible. So thanks guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.